All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. If you can believe it or not, we've managed to make it to episode 100, and I think what better way to celebrate than to take a look back through the last, 2.5, 3 years almost now that we've been doing this and kind of reminisce about some of our favorite moments on the podcast. The kicker is, I know all the clips. Tony has no idea what he's going to be watching. So let's dive right into it.
Hey everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast, where we discuss the ongoing lives and issues of people with developmental disabilities to spark positive change in the field.
And we have a lot of fun doing it.
All right, so we're here at the first official Friends for Life podcast.
FFLP.
C1.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
The first run of the Friends for Life podcast. And
yes.
We are live from the office, the Friends for Life office.
Mm-hmm. Too bad no one can see all this great whiteness.
Yeah.
Just saying, trust and believe. We're going to set this up to be so much better than this. It's going to have so much more color. It's going to pop so much more. But in the meantime, they see us.
I thought we looked pretty good today, so I wasn't too worried about the background. I mean, they got enough good stuff to look at right
exactly. Here. Enjoy. Bask in it, bathe in it.
So the point of this whole endeavor is to try and inform everyone about, your business as a whole. And, the field itself kind of has a lot of misnomers about it. And, we're just trying to bring light to that. So,
right.
So, let's get your background, Tony, because I don't know. Honestly, I don't know your background in this field. Start what got you into recreational care and such?
Well, man, it's funny because the very first thing that got me into it was my grandparents. Well, my grandmother. She worked for the Lucas County Board of DD, and she kind of just dragged me along for any and all of the events. Now, I say that even kind of not even mentioning in my home life, because my Uncle Larry, who's a very, very, very dear love of mine, who passed away some years ago, he had mental retardation, of what they called it back then. Now it's intellectual delay. But we just lived together. That's what we did. Life was life, and it was not normal. So growing up, we did unified bowling leagues, and for anyone out there who doesn't know what that is, that means that people from the normal side of life mix with people with a developmental disability, and you join leagues together. They can be bowling leagues, soccer leagues, baseball, basketball. So I did a lot of that growing up. And when I say a lot of it, from the age of 5 years old, I can remember dancing the Thriller at dinner dances all the way up until at least 14 years of age. So that's kind of how I got to know the population and to know what exactly the developmental disabled were looking for, per se.
So you grow up around all this stuff. I personally didn't. Mm-hmm. So it's very different for me. So a lot of the stuff, you're throwing at me is brand new. And it's really awesome to see how much you guys care and how much time and effort you put into this. This is
thank you.
From the ground up. All right, Tony. So episode number 1, kicking it off. It feels like forever ago.
It does. It was horrible.
We're in the same room.
Right. I mean, you would never would have thought it. Amazing what some coats of paint and some nice pictures and stuff would do, and along with soundproofing and all that.
Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of stayed true to the message throughout this whole time. I mean, that was the very first episode we ever did. We didn't even have microphones yet. We just kind of were winging it. We didn't have cameras or anything. It was just stuff I had laying around, and we made it work. So
I think we did it at 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It was an evening one after a long day, and I think that's what I enjoy the most about it is we did what we are always telling other people to do: just do it. You know, Nike doesn't sponsor us, but I love the phrase, just do it. Like, just get out there. And I think by listening to that clip, there's one thing that I do want to say I apologize for. When I said normal life, I did use air quotes, but if you're just listening to us, you didn't see the air quotes.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, it is what it is. Shout outs and RIP Uncle Larry. I love you, man.
And this was like pre everything that went down over the last couple of years.
Dude,
this was
right.
like before the C word ever got mentioned or heard of. This was like a lifetime ago, it feels like.
Dude, just thinking about how much we've put in and invested, not even just financially, but sweat equity, man. Like, even to you. Like, you are so much more intelligent than you were then about this field.
I would hope so. All right, so we're going to move on to our next clip here, and let's go. So one thing that I really am always interested in, speaking of storytelling, you both work in the DD field. So do you have any really lasting stories that have kind of like made you smile over time? Just like inspiring stories or really exceptional things that have happened where you're just like, this is why I stay here all the time.
There's like a story a week like that just reminds you, every time you feel like this mountain is too big to climb, we're not making any progress, and I can't carry the world, like, I can't do it. And then something will happen, and you're like, oh, all right, I'm ready. We got this.
Got this. Let's do it.
I think the story that comes to mind for me, because normally when I tell the story, like, I get just so shook up by it. But we had a young man who
I knew she was going to tell this story.
Oh, you knew it. You knew it because it's so cool. It's my story that, like,
it is the best.
I can't let go of. He was overweight. I think he was wearing size 40 something in clothes. And because of that, like, he didn't exercise much. He didn't do much in the community. I mean, he was tired and overweight and didn't have friends, and there were just a lot of things, and we always said, oh, he looks so grumpy, but like not thinking about, like, wouldn't I be grumpy in that same situation? And so he was switching providers, and his mom was helping to interview the providers, and she said the most important thing is he has got to get fit, he's got to get healthy and really start doing something different with his life. So they picked the provider, and this house manager, Ashley Green, starts, who is like a true ray of sunshine. And so she worked with him on getting healthy. Now, I'm one of those people, like, if I eat a salad on Sunday, I expect 40 pounds to be lost on Monday. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going back to my eating habits.
There you go.
And he was not real happy about the changes, but he started to have fun with it. And he lost so much weight and got so healthy. And so we were checking in during COVID, and he was having picnics outside with his girlfriend, which was like, wow, he has a girlfriend and he's making friends. And then we had a vaccine clinic, and he came walking in, and he had this sweatshirt on and these sweatpants and just looked like Mr. GQ. I'm the king of fitness. And I said, oh my gosh, you look amazing. You are so handsome. And he would just get this big smile. You could tell he had worked hard, and he was so proud of himself.
Nice.
And for the first time, we saw him really bond with other people. So when we would interview him with his house manager, any of his DSPs, he was always touching them and, I love you, you're like my brother, you're like my sister, and just expressing love and affection and admiration in a way that we had never seen. And it was amazing. And so his mom wrote a nomination for the house manager to receive an award at our DSP Awards. So she won that award. And we thought, no, this story is too good. This is too much for her to think, well, I won an award, that's cool, but like, what now? And we didn't want her to think she was forgotten, because she's not. And so we came up with this great idea of doing a billboard that was going to be a surprise to both of them and the billboard said, "Thank you, Ashley from Chad."
Ashley changed my life.
Is that what it said?
Yeah, Ashley changed my life from Chad.
Yes.
Well, you probably made the billboard,
She
right?
did. She did. Genius.
No.
Actually, a designer made the billboard. I just told him what to put on
And she
there.
could tell me where all the commas were.
Yeah.
But she did the pictures, and the picture was like one of them together, and it was amazing. So we picked this day to meet at this like Dairy Queen parking lot, and no one knows why we're there. Chad's there, Ashley's there, her husband was there. People from the agency were there, and she's just kind of looking around like, what the heck is going on? And we didn't tell anything, and all of a sudden we said, turn around. And when they turned around, there was the billboard with both of them. And his mom, was she on FaceTime?
Yes, she was on FaceTime from Florida.
So she got to witness the whole thing, and he said, "See, Mom, I told you I would be famous." And that was the coolest moment. And then he was hugging Ashley's husband and saying, "You're like family too." And to see this progression of this human being and her genuinely happy to be there every step of the way, life-changing to be a part of that.
All right, so that was Brandy and Anna from Lincoln
Hey,
County.
ladies!
Yeah, they were the first guests we had that traveled like really far to come to our studio.
Right, which was odd. Like I didn't think we were cool enough that people would come from a whole nother city to see us. But I mean, they are just awesome people, man. And for them to be so open to what we're trying to do, and I love the collaborations that we've had, all of the synergy. I mean, awesome ladies, and they're doing wonderful work down there, man.
Yeah, they welcomed us with open arms when we came down there to record our first road trip series, which we're still working on. We're gonna be working on that one for a long time.
Wow, guys.
But no, I think that episode is where you started to get like the idea that we should do this and travel to different counties, because like they traveled all the way out here, and we got to a point there for a while where we started like running out of people to talk to around here.
Yeah.
So we had to start thinking outside the box. And I think that was like the first moment where you were like, I think we need to hit the road.
Yeah. I would have never thought it would have been as successful as it is. There's and I want to give a shout out to all the county boards that have been, open to us coming and visiting, having these conversations, not even just with the county boards, but with the individuals you serve, the people in the community, the providers. I mean, all of you have been awesome. Thank you.
Does your technology background kind of have any influence on the job now? Does it like help you with maybe data? I don't know, anything that's really kind of changing your perspective? Because, it is interesting having people come from all these different backgrounds. Like, I come from finance and then media at the same time. So it's like, how can we use our skills to make changes in the field?
We've had somebody else on who was in the construction.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, whoa, really? Yeah, you never would have thought.
Yep.
Yeah, it has, but it's always funny to ask someone what their contribution to their organization is, because now they're talking about themselves. You'd have to ask the people that work with me to tell me if I've added anything. But I'd like to think that I have. And, most of it comes down to the fact that this industry for decades and decades has been serviced by people who have social work degrees, who are caregivers. And there hasn't been an awful lot of what I would call historic for-profit business, financial, strategic planning involved until recently. And we're starting to see that shift because, I'm sure we'll get to this later, but the funding methodology used and the rate structures and the formulas used were set so long ago that the world is changing. The economics are changing. Capitalism has pushed wages into a stratosphere that doesn't allow us to do the same things we did with the same amount of money. So I think those are the gifts that I'm bringing to Sunshine that I couldn't do delivering direct care. Ironically, we're now delivering direct care because of the staffing issues. But those are the gifts. I think taking the efficiencies and creating them in the system, because this is an inefficient system. Across the state, across the country. It's evolved that way. It's not a fault of anyone. But I think getting everything out of every dime has probably been the greatest gift that I've brought in trying to raise wages for the direct care, and direct care as a large category. Med techs, we're talking direct support professionals, nurses, everybody.
Yeah, that's I mean, we might as well just get it while we're here. I mean, that's a huge issue going on right now, staffing. I mean, Tony and I are continually talking about this, and his wife and I are continually talking about this. It's, this is something we've tried in advertising differently. We're trying, using this podcasting platform and our media platforms to get the word out there. And, sometimes I sit at home and I think this isn't something we can advertise our way out of, I don't think, because as much as we're advertising, there's companies with millions of dollars advertising way more for different jobs. And, so where do we stand on, where do we stand on this issue? What can we do as even a brainstorming idea? Because it's so frustrating, because you are caring for people's lives. It's not just like, here's your burger, get out of line, go. You can make more. It's a very current and relevant and stressful topic to think about.
It is.
It is all-consuming, and you said we only have an hour. We could go for
Let's go
a
5.
day. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll give you my perspective, which by definition is, I'm speaking on behalf of Sunshine as well, but we're at a crossroads. This industry has seen changes. Every industry has. You ebb and flow, and you go through periods of flux and prosperity. But I actually think we are at a really interesting point. And the pandemic indirectly created what we thought was the hardest year, right? Yeah. When we're living through the pandemic, it's health and safety. It's not quality of life, it's health and safety. Keep people alive. Protocols. There was no book.
Yeah.
No.
We were creating the book on the fly for future generations. Now, we survived that, and I think the government did the right thing up front. I think the stimulus payment, the first one, I think it was necessary. People were literally not allowed to work.
Yeah.
We were restricting people's ability to make a living just to keep people safe. As we got to the second and the third, as the unemployment assistance, $300 a week, continued to go, I think we may have crossed a line between doing the right thing and then eventually doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yeah.
And we've disincented people to get back into the workforce. But I say that it's an indirect impact because something happened as all of this happened. Not only did people not have the motivation, maybe, and I say maybe because it's not all, there are no alls or nevers, to come back to work. They were taking care of family. They created a different purpose in their life. The grandparents, the parents, the children, the cousins that maybe they didn't get to take care of, they weren't around as much, they found greater joy in that. There wasn't a laziness factor. They were okay. They were paying their bills. They had an influx of cash, and they realized that other things were more important. So now you have to have a motivation to come back, and this is where capitalism reared its head.
Yeah.
So the Amazons of the world,
McDonald's.
even McDonald's, any for-profit organization, and in Northwest Ohio, we've got Amazon, you've got First Solar, you've got a second First Solar site, you now have Peloton coming in, even as far as Sandusky with Cedar Point. Without a workforce, what did the for-profits have to do?
Increase wages.
Increase wages. Now, they can do that because capitalism allows them to. They can either increase productivity or decrease it. They can increase their prices or decrease them, et cetera, et cetera. In our industry, we don't have that ability. So we don't make anything, we don't sell anything. So now we could compete years and years ago at 9 or 10 with a certain demographic. We could then compete at 11, 12, 13 because we were close.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not close anymore.
Yeah.
So now we have a math problem, and that's where we sit. So this is not a matter of there are not people to work. There are not people to work a very difficult job for significantly less than what they could make elsewhere.
Yes.
If you can make 20 and go home and never think about your job and spend time with your family, why would you make 13 or 14 and carry the weight of someone's health with you and worry about them when you're gone?
Yeah, and maybe even get
that's where
called
we're
to
at.
come back.
All right, so that clip was Jason Abadili from Sunshine, and I think that was the first time that we had really went into detail about the staffing crisis and had some eye-opening conversations around, why the field that you're in and you run your business in isn't really set up to handle like the modern world, because it's like stuck in like decades ago. And for me, this is a great conversation. I think it was a conversation that a lot of people didn't want to hear, but I was glad we had it. So what do you think, Tony? I mean, I remember we talked about that one for a long time.
For a while, yeah. Well, first off, I am a big appreciator of Sunshine, even bigger appreciator of Jason. I know what it's like, and he knows that some people just don't dig him, don't like him. The thing that I love about him the most is that he doesn't care, and he's putting his foot in the backside of inequality with the financial structure. And he has his numbers. He has the mindset, and he has the elbows to rub to be able to do it. And let's really talk about it. Now, I definitely get when people get nervous, there comes this, well, let's push them down. Let's say this about them. Let's say that about them. I know I've been called all kind of names in the book and have been basically almost treated as if, oh, this company is just for Tony. At one point people said I had multiple Escalades with 30-day tags and stuff. I heard all of these weird rumors just because I bought my wife a vehicle. Okay, whatever. But he hit the nail on the head with a lot of the information. And I mean, out of the majority of our episodes, that is one that I say most people need to go back and listen to and really grasp the points that he's trying to make. It's not trying to be a dick. It's not trying to be unfavorable to the desires that people want to make more money and stuff, but we have to look at the actual structure. And if we're not doing that, then we're not really trying to be as quote unquote compassionate as we say we are. We have to understand, as these laws and rules were put into place so many years ago, there was no real reason to change it because the status quo stayed the same. But as soon as you throw that rocky dice in of the last couple of years, you start seeing oh man, we didn't plan for this. We didn't plan for that. So I love the discussion. It opened up different avenues and it got people thinking. And shout out to Sunshine. I mean, over 50 play. I'm they've been around forever. And I'm so happy to see them change their structure to help the DSPs.
So one thing that even we've said on the podcast, so I'm calling ourselves out, is we're always saying we're competing with McDonald's and stuff like that, which you said we're not. So I'm interested to see, what aren't we seeing in this line of sight? What are we doing wrong on our end? Specifically, me basically being the marketing guy for Tony, and then Tony being the CEO. What are we thinking wrongly about? I guess is what I'm asking.
And yeah, you're not alone by any stretch. When I was doing that initial outreach to people to see, okay, is this a field that we'd want to work with? Are the people good? Are they like our first client in the field? It was eye-opening. It's oh my God, is there some really bad script that's being handed out? Hey, you're a provider. Congratulations on opening up your organization. When anybody asks you about DSPs and workforce crisis, you should say this. We're competing with McDonald's. The pay is about the same.
It does feel that way.
And here you have to be responsible for someone's life. Ooh, sign me up for that. That's so you're saying it's going to be hard work and I'm going to be underpaid, and we wonder why this message doesn't attract people.
But it's so caring.
Yeah, well, and that starts to get to it. You know, a moment ago when I said, "Hey, did either of you?" and not rhetorical, did either of you get into this work because it's going to be easy and I'm going to get rich doing it?
No,
Absolutely.
tried everything else to get rich before.
So that's the reality. I ask it in every workshop. Nobody ever raises their hands. So we know that in our mind because I asked you and you consciously thought and responded to the question, and we know it in our hearts too, yet our words are constantly fighting what we know in our hearts and our minds. So that's where a big part of the problem stems from. And I get that on the surface, it seems like, well, you know, McDonald's or Amazon or your local grocery store chain or Home Depot or Target are able to pay the same or more, unfortunately, in some cases. And yes, there's far more responsibility with the work you do versus like, hey, run this cash register or stock these shelves. But you're looking for a different type of person. The type of person you're after might take one of those jobs because, hey, you got to pay the bills, keep food on the table. Nothing wrong with hard work for a paycheck. But you know them. Like, think of that staff member that I said, like, if you could clone somebody, think of that person. Would they stay on that job long term? Would they find the fulfillment that they're after, stocking shelves or working by a register?
I don't think so. Not at all. No.
Most likely not.
Yeah. That's very true. And it's, I think when people say that, it comes out of a place of frustration. Yeah. Because not to say it's easy to blame, it's just like you're looking for a logical, your brain always tries to go for this logical rhetoric of like, what am I doing wrong? And then it's like, you know, we think, oh, well, everybody else is paying more. It's that simple. But like, an example like of exactly what you're saying is, and Tony, close your ears. I've had people like there's marketing firms all over that need video people, and then they're like, I've had people reach out to me and say you should do this, and I'm like, yes, but like for me, the impact comes from like there's like if I work for Bill's Carpeting or whatever you want to call it. That has no impact on the world. I don't care about carpeting. Me trying to make videos to help sell carpeting while it could bring in some cash is not conducive to like I feel like with this, we're trying to change perspective, life, like give people better wages. We're like fighting for a cause, whereas like I don't care about selling products. Like we're not selling a product, we're selling a mindset, you know, like kind of that's what we're after. So I think you're dead on with that, and it's just never crossed either of our minds because we get caught up in the minutia. And that's what people like you come in and you're not involved. You can be like, hey, everything you're doing is dumb. And like they're like that's what it boils down to a lot of the time because we don't see it. We are here every day doing the in and out. You know.
Well, it's something I was told when I was young. If you want to make a lot of money, you get into the field of money. You know, that's what you do. Go Wall Street, get on the stock market. That's where you can make tons and tons of money once you know how to do things. And that's not taken away from anybody who may sell a service or a product, because you can become financially wealthy doing that as well.
Absolutely.
But again, just to reaffirm what you just said, when you're dealing with people, that is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a tangent on my end, so sorry about that.
Tangent.
But what, like, do you have any advice for like how to change that mindset? Like, what companies can do to start looking at this, like how you're looking at it? Like, obviously they can hire.
I got a question that kind of goes in with that. Okay, so what is it that you're doing that's not cookie cutter? You know, you don't have to detail all your secrets or anything, but if you could pick one tool or something that you do that most people like. Again, Paul and I, we sit down because it is our job to market not only this show, but, you know, Friends for Life, so on and so forth, our services and everything. But is there a certain tool or anything that helps you?
It starts with the mindset. So what I always start with in the workshops is addressing the McDonald's mindset head on. And just, you know, coming from doing this workshop at the Wood County Board of DD, you know, people, I go around at the start, I'm like, hey, what are you hoping to get out of today? And one of the first questions is like, I can't compete with everybody's hiring, you know, and like they're all throwing out $5,000 sign-on bonuses. It's insane. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We can't compete on dollars. Don't get me wrong. Everyone doing this incredible work deserves more than what they get.
Yes.
I don't have the magic wand to magically increase reimbursement rates to give DSPs what they truly deserve. So what I say is, okay, that's a limitation. It stinks. We cannot control it. Just as if, Tony, say you have a new person that you're going to start supporting today. That person's in a wheelchair. Is any time in here going to be wasted on, oh man, this guy's in a wheelchair. Like, this would be way easier if he could just get up and walk. Why can't he walk?
Yes.
I like that. I like where you
That's
put
a
that.
great analogy.
You don't, okay, the limitations are what they are. We want to know, but let's get to know this guy. Build a relationship. What does he need? What does he want to do? What's important to him? What's important for him? You get to know the person, and that gives us the hint of the trick of where to go. Yeah, radical concept for the field, so bear with me. Being person-centered.
Yeah, truly person-centered, because people throw that phrase out.
Yeah, but applying it to employees and the people you want to be employees.
Yeah.
Who's that ideal employee? That's why I asked that question of who would you clone? So you're thinking of a real person, not some mythical unicorn of a person that's perfect in every way and does not exist. Yeah. Because you can't hire that person.
Correct.
Yeah, because they already own everything. Like.
So getting person-centered around who you want to attract, and that starts with talking to your best staff currently, hearing their own words about what do they get to do, what's one of their best days, why do they continue to come back here day after day, week after week, year after year, and then putting those things out there into the world, whether it's on video, recording, job posts, to resonate and connect with like-minded people that don't know this exists. Because when you have a DSP say it in their own words, it's going to be really compelling to somebody like-minded, like, man, that sounds like the perfect job. That's what I'm looking for. I want to do that. And that's problem number one right now. Any of us can go out to the street corner right here and wait for 100 people to pass by and go, hey, you want to be a DSP? And what's going to... What are you talking about?
Yes.
I got a dollar for you.
No, I'm real sorry. Do you want to be a direct support professional? Still confused look. So we have this awareness problem, this challenge of upfront, we have to educate people. Okay, here's what the job is, what it involves, and educate people. Whereas if you ask any kid, hey, do you want to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer? They have some basic mental construct with this. People have no idea. So that's the unique challenge that all of us are facing. And then what do we do? The first marketing recruiting message we put out in the world, and we get Google News alerts on these. Hey, it's hard work and the pay sucks. You want a job? Why aren't we getting people?
Yeah.
So
you know what? I'm glad that you say that, because I have a lot of people I think contradict towards me, or think that I'm contradicting, because yes, the job can be difficult.
Yeah.
There are difficult parts of it, but I never thought this was a hard job to do. But that's again why I've excelled at it, because every day that I went in was not work. So a person like myself, I'm gonna try to get some free advice.
Go for it.
A person like myself, I've noticed when I spend more one-on-one time with my DSPs or even my supervisors, and kind of break down the barrier of that facade that I am
the boss.
Yes, the boss. Because I hate it when people say it. But like, oh, that's my boss. I'm like, no, our clients are our bosses. I am just the guy who, put all of this stuff together for us. Other than that, they're the bosses. But how do you do that through not having the time? I mean, we're getting ready to hit the road for trying to do 88 counties for podcasts, and, a podcast in every county. But I can't always have that one-on-one, like, hey, I know your kid's sick, but I still need you to get to work, feel better.
All right, so this conversation was with Scott DeFacel of Blitz, and, it was kind of an eye-opener for us because, we literally were like, you're saying everything we're doing is wrong and the way we're thinking about it is wrong, and he really laid it out. And I think it was really an eye-opening conversation about thinking the wrong way about who the field is competing with, because it's a caregiving field where everybody is saying all the time, like, oh, well, I could go work at McDonald's. But, the people who are attracted to work at McDonald's are not the same people who are going to want to work in a care field. So, I don't know. That was another tough one to hear, but it was it really needed to be said, and I think a lot of it rings true.
Hey, man, to Scott, thank you. Because it gave us a whole lot of different strategies, for one, to promote. But for two, a lot like with Jason's stuff, he was spot on. You know, we did have this kind of script for ourselves saying that, oh, man, everybody's going to McDonald's. Nah, I think the funny thing is we did have a staff person who actually left us and said, yeah, I'm going to McDonald's. Like that was amazing to know. But it really opened my eyes into saying, like, you know what? We gave up on our mission, on our goal. Actually, what is our mission and goal again? What are we shooting to do? And it was after that I started hiring and finding new success coaches and teachers and stuff for my management team and trying all of these new things to help get back in the conversation, you know, instead of us just putting our hands up and saying, oh, you know, we're beat. You know, as long as McDonald's can give such and such amount of dollars, we'll never be able to compete. And it was far from the truth. Now, there are some things about it that I still feel a little, I guess, on edge about, because I've been doing this for a long time and I know what the field is like. So, I mean, it's kind of it's a double-edged sword in my eyes. Like,
well, I think anything that challenges the way that you think about things is a good thing, even if it's not something you want to hear. Mm-hmm. So even if you get one nugget out of that and get one good piece of information that helps you be more successful, I think that's the important part. And if, you know, like a lot of people in our society nowadays don't want to hear anything that challenges their belief and mindset. And it's just like, well, you're never going to grow if you're only listening to things that back up what you think. I mean, you have to take the other side into account sometimes. And that was one of the conversations that did it, I think, for us initially. It kind of was like a slap in the face. And
the reason we brought you in here is you are a parent of a child with autism. So, you know, what is that like? Because we've had a few parents in here, but they've also kind of worked in the disabilities field. Yeah. So they have a completely different perspective as someone who's outside of the field. So, you know, let us have it.
Well, my son's name is Xander. Actually, John Alexander. We call him Xander. Right around 2 is when, and maybe there was other signs before 2, but he was my first. Mm-hmm. So
you don't know.
I didn't even realize. And we had just moved in the house we're in now. And actually, it was November 5 years ago. And I just had my other son, who was like 3 months old. We just moved in a new house. Mm-hmm. And he really had no speech. So that was the big worry, you know, and my sister is a school psychologist. So talking to her, you know, like 2.5 was our line. Like, okay, if he doesn't start having more words by then, you know, we'll start doing something or reaching out to somebody. And actually went into my doctor's office and saw a different doctor because he was sick. And I saw that doctor 2 times in a row in a week because, like, he was having some hives. Mm-hmm. And he just blatantly said to me, like, you know, pretty much he thought he was on the spectrum and didn't totally word it all right, but got me going in the right direction. Like,
got you.
Because he was, we started out at Rehab Dynamics doing speech and OT. I didn't see a whole lot of, how do I want to say, a whole lot changing then, but then he turned 3, and at 3, we then went to the school, Svaney schools, and he started preschool, and still no speech really. I mean, he was getting little words here and there, but not much.
Mm-hmm. Not able to form a sentence.
Yeah. Oh, no, not at all. Huh. Like, I mean, he could show me what he wanted. He could take me, you know, that kind of thing. And I think he understood, you know, but, you know, some of the, like, the eye contact was a big thing. You know, he could just tune you out at that time. And, you know, that was kind of scary. Yeah. It's scary not knowing. Like,
right.
Like, at that time.
And still, like, that's your first child.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like,
and then you got this baby next to you. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I got this little one here. And then, it was, I was at a bad point at that time. Yeah. Like, just and I'm pregnant now, so my hormones are crazy. But it was scary. Like, I didn't feel like, no, I had many people there for me, but I didn't feel like it did. Because I just didn't want to talk to nobody about it, because...
who can you talk to?
Like,
who
it's
really
not normal.
understands?
Like, not that that's not normal, but what every other child at that age is doing, my son wasn't doing.
Right.
And it was like, and then you didn't know if he was or when he was going to do it. And that was really hard. But, like a couple weeks into him being in preschool, they had this parents' night. It was around Thanksgiving, I think. And everybody went in, and this preschool my son Deacon's in now is awesome. It's half neurotypical kids, half kids with many different disabilities, ranging from, I'm sure, probably everything almost. And going to that was eye-opening, because he just wasn't really a part of it. Thank you. He wasn't really part of it. Like, he was just going and doing other things, and I like left there in tears, because I never saw him in like around other kids, and that's, I think, what his most difficult thing is for him, which I think he's getting so much better at. But right around 4, he started like talking and words, and that was like, I bet it was the best thing in the world.
Oh my God.
Like, I remember it snowing, and he like walked out and he said, "It's snowing," and I remember I posted on Facebook that day, like, it was, I'm sure some people didn't think it was a big deal, but that was a big deal. Right. It was such a big deal. Like, it was wonderful. And he honestly, since then till now, is like only improved. And he's in first grade at Hillview Elementary, and they are so awesome. I think he could have a totally different perspective of school and people and everything.
So that was a tough episode. That was
Dude,
it was
me kind of.
Not only was Kylie the first parent we've had in here that didn't work in the field, but she was the first person to ever cry on our podcast. And I remember sitting here like, oh, I don't know what to do. That was my first thought. You pretty much carried that whole episode. I was like, I don't know what to say right now. This is really awkward.
It was, oh man, still to this day, I think this is why our direction has changed the way that it has. It went from all of these conversations with so many, executive directors and stuff, and talking about this life that we're only partially living. Mm-hmm. She's in it every day. Her kids are in it every day. Her husband, so that changes the whole conversation, and it opens again another avenue for thought provocation. So we can have the conversations that are needed for help and for guidance versus just this, I don't know, this minuscule of, oh, look what he can do, look what she can do, and thumbs up. So
inspiration porn.
Yeah, the inspiration porn. Shout out.
I remember going into this episode, we had initially wanted to talk about caregiver burnout and what it's like, and she immediately were like, so do you get burned out? She's like, no, he's my son. Like, I remember that specific, we just threw the whole topic out the window, and it was like we never talked about that again. Yeah. She's like, he's my kid. No, it's just like, why I don't get burned out just any more than a normal parent would get burned out with anybody else, or it's just like, why I don't even think about it like that. And that really shifted my mindset. I was like,
right,
hell yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the first episodes we did with a parent, and we've done a few more since then, which we're going to go over right now.
Nice.
What I wanted to ask, Bob, you had talked a little earlier and said how she had an accident, and that's what I guess manifested her developmental difference. Because that's one of the terms we're trying, I think, for 2022, we're going to try to put in place to get some people to use, because we understand differences, I think, as being something that we can cope with. When you think of disability, it's always in the back of your mind that no one could ever cope or grow from it. So we're going to try to change that lingo. But, what was the accident, and how exactly did did certain things manifest that you knew your life has changed like 100% now?
She was a near drowning back when she was about 18 months old. She spent 6 months in a coma. The day she went in, the doctors said, you might as well get a priest to come in here and give her last rites. We don't expect her to live through the night. So like I said, she was in a coma for 6 months. She came out of it. We never knew if she was or not. And as much as I jokingly say to her, she's a pain in my butt, I'm allowed to say that on radio, right?
Yeah. We've said much worse.
But as much as I tell her that, every day with her is a blessing. So, she, like I says, learn to adjust, adapt, and do the best we can. There are times I get frustrated with her, as we get frustrated with anybody. Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of, how do you deal with it? What are you going to do? As I was sitting here waiting for the podcast, I noticed your one little poster on the wall here with a deck of cards.
Yes.
And somebody had asked me a long time ago, how do you deal with all this in your life? And I says, well, I'm playing poker with the man upstairs, and it's 5 cards, and there's no draws, no wilds, and so you play the hand you're dealt with, and you do the best you can.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So, I guess this, sometimes it gets very, very frustrating with having to deal with stuff. Sometimes in the middle of doing stuff, you have to stop and regroup and, stop running into this wall. Let's use the door that's right next door to it instead of trying to go through this wall. So it's a matter of how you adjust and adapt. But she's always been told, and Tony knows this, and a lot of people know it. I says, you treat her as if she is a normal person. Of course, somebody please define normal, because I don't know what it is.
I haven't figured that out either.
But you treat her as you would anybody else. And there have been times when we've had to work with Laura and remind her. She gets very, very attached to people. She likes friendships a lot, but it's a matter of, let's get more people in here. But, she's like any other person, we get used to routines. Mm-hmm. She doesn't like her routines changed. So, trying to work through those kind of problems and issues, we have to remind her. And it's, with Tony, you like Tony, and let's make sure that we keep Tony happy so he keeps coming back.
So that was Bob Cleaver, and that was another really great conversation. And I just it always blows me away how open parents are in talking about this, because a lot of the time, if you don't have any association with the disabilities field, it's people are very cautious and tiptoe, and they don't want to offend people or whatever. But when you get a parent in here, they're like, listen, this is every day of my life. We're not tiptoeing around shit this. And you get real honest conversations, because they don't, a lot of the times, probably don't have a lot of people to talk to about this stuff. So I think it's really important to get that message out there. They are dealing with a lot day in and day out, but it's also just their day in, day out of life as well. And, they've dealt with a lot of things throughout their life. It's probably very difficult. So if you have a child and they're diagnosed with a disability, it just changes the way you think about life. And a lot of these parents said, it changed the way they look at the world, completely. And I think Bob was very open and honest about everything. And he even kind of got a little snarky on the episode later on about, he's like, we're not afraid to yell at you guys if you do something wrong, and that's your kid.
You are, dude. Before I even go more into this, shout outs to Laura, his daughter, and shout outs to Noah. Noah is one of our very first individuals that I had, that I was serving in the very beginning of the growth of the company. I mean, I'm working 50 to 60 hours a week with another guy. We're going back and forth. And these two amazing people, Noah and Laura, show me what I can be in life. Because they didn't take no for an answer. You will see that they have CP, and you would think of all these limitations of them, but they broke the barrier. Noah whooped my ass in video games all the time, and Laura will pimp me into buying every bracelet and necklace that she has because she does awesome work. And she's a Buckeye fan. I'm a Michigan fan, but she looks out. She makes Michigan stuff because she's an entrepreneur and a capitalist. Good work, Laura. But to what Mr. Cleaver said, him and Mrs. Cleaver, their whole lives changed with their daughter, and then their lives change as they continue to grow and get older. And they have been in situations where they're depending and counting on us. And we'll have somebody screw up and either not do what they were supposed to do or create a monkey wrench in that situation. And they have every right to be pissed. We have a contract saying that we are going to do these things for you. And no matter how much I want to say, oh, yes, it's this person's fault, that person's fault, ultimately, I have to apologize. I'm sorry. Because whatever happened, Friends for Life didn't do the right thing. We didn't make sure that someone was there to protect the health and safety of your daughter and to keep this machine moving. And I remember having in past times people who would come, well, they're saying this and that, and it's not my fault. It doesn't matter. Leadership, you swallow all of that, and you realize, you know what? I'm the best. I'm the best that they have right now. So we have to come up with these scenarios mentally that we take that. We take that feedback and we give better outcomes. So shout outs to them. One of the best families that I've ever served between Laura and Noah. I mean, I love them all. I mean, I love all my clients. Any individual that we have ever served, you have much of my love and respect. And to the parents and the people who are there for you.
I mean, we can't just skip over the story. That is a heck of an adoption story right there.
Yeah.
So 4 months in South Africa.
Yep.
What was that experience like? I mean, is it just a lot of were you working from there, or was it just like you're stuck there? Or
we just were stuck. We just hung out, and eventually my husband had to go back home because, again, insurance. We were bringing her home. We knew she would need lots of medical attention when she got home. And so he went back home with our son, and my daughter and I stayed there for the rest of the trip, the last, I think, 7 or 8 weeks. And we just rented a house, but people came alongside us and they helped us, and someone let us borrow their car, so we weren't paying a full renter fee and things like that. And so we had a lot of support from the other families because there was a couple other families there that were also stuck. But if anything, it really...
Oh, so it just wasn't her. It was...
there were 6 of us families.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So we bonded, and other families were there adopting kids who have disabilities as well. One of my friends, she was adopting, her son has autism and various things. And so, we hung out and it bonded my daughter and I because I was I get the only other thing you could do is just leave her there. But she was already adopted legally. She's completely my daughter. I'm not going to leave her behind. And that's not even an option. So we we fought hard for her, and that's what I feel like we've been doing since we got home, is just teaching people that even if she's different, she's still completely worthy of everything else that everyone else has. So whether we're out in public and somebody's she gets mistaken for a boy a lot because she the amount of sensory that she seeks, she rips her hair out and she kind of rubs her scalp with her palm a lot. And so just, reminding people like, oh, girls can have different hair. And, or little kids are very curious, like, why are her legs like that? So just explaining to people, like, even at a young age, like teaching the next generation, just be curious and ask questions, but always say hi. Don't be scared of her because she might make weird sounds and she doesn't talk. But so I think that's what makes me like most excited to work in the field, but also be a parent, is just advocating that message over and over again. Like, these people are just like you and I, and it doesn't matter what they can or cannot do and how they look different or how they get around differently or how they eat differently. So, yeah.
Did you have any like family members growing up that had a disability or anything, or?
No. Like I said, we got into the process to just adopt. And then once we realized, like, you're just staring at this list of kids and you're like, you could wait a long time for a 2-year-old that has no needs whatsoever. But that's not why we got into the process. We didn't do it, we're actually very pro like family and very pro reunification. Like, I don't want to see kids get adopted. I want to see kids stay in their families. So now my wheels are turning of like, well, how do I help here and other countries so that parents don't feel like they have to make that choice? Because I know for our daughter, it was a lot of the, how am I going to care for her? How am I going to pay for this and that? And for me, that's a horrible, horrible reason to choose adoption, because she has parents that love her and they just didn't have access to those things. So that's kind of like a dark, kind of yucky part of adoption. But for me, I'm like, how do we get access to people so they can parent and feel empowered and, have things like Medicaid that will help them, just meet their daily needs. So
that's so awesome, because that is like literally the exact opposite mindset of like 99% of the world, I think. They'd be like, I'm not touching that.
I get myself in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
No, maybe we need more people like you, to be honest. There's not enough of them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this all feels like it's coming from a place of just like pure empathy and compassion, not just like, I mean, if anybody's adopting a child at all, that's coming from a huge place of empathy and compassion, because that's like, it's a large financial undertaking. It's a large, time undertaking, and it's very thing. So like what you're doing is awesome. Do you have plans to, when you said you want to go back to South Africa, are you going to, have them meet their parents again, or is there any plans to do that? Because
it just depends. I mean, we like to keep their history private for them to share when they can and how they want to, especially for our son who's older and can share those things. But I just would say every child is very complex, and their history with their birth families are very complex. So we leave it up to our kids, like they, as the adoptee, it's their story. It's what they're looking for. Just recently, our son actually, he's the 10-year-old, he is, like I said, deaf and has CP. Well, when we adopted him, his name was Caleb, and we changed it to Ben, because we were like, oh, I want to name him, like our first kid, you get to name your baby even though he's 6. And so he was extremely language delayed because he didn't have access to sign language until he was almost 5.5. So he missed those core years. So we've been playing catch up ever since we've had him. And he uses a communication device that we got through the board, which has been a total lifesaver. Nice. Again, one of those things we would have just tried to find a way to get an iPad versus like having access to it through these services. And so through that, because he can't really express himself super well with sign language, because his CP signs are really distinct and his hands might not be able to quickly make those motions. He gets frustrated. It's hard. Yeah. So pressing a button is just way easier. Right. So I can sign to him and he can receive that with receptive language, but his expressive is really hard. So once we got access to this iPad, it's like his language exploded. And now he's able to say, I actually want to go by Caleb. Like before I was adopted, my name was Caleb. I want to go back to that. Like, I'm finished with Ben. So we're like, all right, buddy, like you're 10. So he's learning to advocate for himself. Nice. So we just recently this month, like told all our friends and family and hear everybody at the board. We're like, he's going back to Caleb. And so he's been so excited. He's like changing his Netflix profile to say Caleb and everything. So yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, nice. I'm curious. What is he binging on Netflix?
Lots of PJ Masks, which is like, I'm pretty sure a show for like 3-year-olds, but he's like stuck on it.
PJ Masks is awesome.
He loves PJ Masks, yes. But he's getting into the Xbox with his dad now. So now he's asking a lot for like, if I clean my room, can I have the Xbox? Like, yeah. We're in that stage now. So
yeah, there you go.
Yes.
The best
That's
stage.
what my boys are.
Yes.
Oh man, they really are.
Yeah.
They were up last night to like 11 watching wrestling or something.
Oh man.
So get ready for that.
Yeah.
So
Underwear and oiled up.
Yeah.
very strange. But so I mean, what does he like to do besides playing video games? I mean, that's like the key commodity. Any like, you know, young to teen boy, that's like the thing right now. So anything else that he enjoys doing?
He's really into soccer, which has been really fun. So we just did a soccer camp this week, and he won tickets to the crew game for this weekend. So he's very excited. I have all the kids at this camp. But his favorite team is Everton, which is a Premier League team
I don't know
over in
much
Europe.
about soccer.
It's okay.
Yeah, my kids are known because they're into soccer tough too. Like,
Yeah.
we should probably get them together at some point. Like it sounds like they'll have a great time.
Yeah, so we got him tickets to see them for his birthday this month. So he doesn't know that it's coming yet. So he'll be very excited.
Nice.
That'll be awesome. What
Enjoy
day is his
it, Caleb.
Mine's on the 7th, so I'm
Okay.
excited.
He's a 24.
Yeah, my daughter's is the 9th. My sister's the 10th.
Liz is the 9th?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
All the July
I should
birthdays.
have known that because she's my niece.
Yeah, you should have.
Yeah, oh.
You see that, Lily?
Awkward.
That's my life. But, you know, anyway, is there anything that, you know, that you feel is important for people to know about, you know, kids with disabilities? I know you kind of talked about it, but, you know, a lot of the time from people who aren't involved with people or don't have them in their life or don't work at a job like this, it's so not visible to the public, disabilities. It's just not there. Like you see somebody at Walmart occasionally getting groceries or something, or someone, you know, out in public, you know, at the movie theater or something. But other than that, we don't get a glimpse into their day-to-day life like you would anybody else. So
Yeah. I mean, other than what I've already said of like, they're just people like us, and it doesn't matter how they do things differently or look differently. They want the same things in life out of we do. And I would just say, like, start teaching your kids now about, like, they're going to have classmates that are different. And there's just a huge difference between people who will approach my daughter and be like, hey, Hattie, how are you? They know she can't talk back. She can't make eye contact. But for me, those are those moments that go so far because they're treating her like a human. If you saw a cute 5-year-old and she's cute, you would say hi, you know? Or like little kids who shy away and parents kind of like tug them away. And I'm like, no, bring them back. Like let them explore and like learn who she is and ask those questions. So for me, those are those moments that I like make it or break it as a parent of just start now. Like get to know them, talk to them. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Yeah. So, and I think it will change the future for adults with disabilities for sure.
absolutely.
So on the trend with parents, what a wild story. Amanda Kick, she was with the Licking County Board. Oh my gosh, man. Like traveling across the globe, getting essentially stranded in a different country for 4 months to adopt a child, let alone is a huge hassle. And then on top of it, her daughter has a disability and they had so much more paperwork and stuff to do. And it just sounds like a hassle and a half. So like kudos to Amanda. When I heard this story, I was like, this is 100% going on this 100 episode because like
It's got to.
what? And she's like, yeah, it's no big deal. I'm like, that is a huge deal.
Yeah,
that is a massive deal. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think it really puts in perspective. And if you don't listen or watch this episode and put it in perspective, that you need to stop complaining about stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because especially with your kids, and it's a game changer for me all the time. Like I've said on countless episodes on some of the things that I do to try to keep my calm when I'm like really irritated or frustrated with my children. I think of them in a coffin. Like that kind of stops me from going off the deep end. But like, I have to ask myself, would I really go through all of that to have a loved one or to really help? I mean, and I don't know how people judge, moral lines and all of that. I believe that I am capable of a lot of things. I believe a lot of people are capable of a lot of things, but I just don't think I know enough people who are that deeply invested into either having a child or helping people. Like, that's serious, bro.
Yeah, that's one of the most amazing stories I've heard in my life.
Right.
Let alone on this podcast. I mean, it's insane. So great work, Amanda.
Yeah, and just aside from that, go watch the full episode, everybody.
It was awesome.
I mean, she was heart-wrenching. And this actually takes me into the mindset for other agencies. Like, are there any red flags? Because it's not like, I'm sure most people are just walking up on a daily basis like, hey, can I vandalize your body for personal gain? There's like a strategic roadmap that people are doing to get these things. Can you give us any examples on like warning signs or red flags that parents or agencies or family members can look out for?
I think what you'll start seeing is a change in behavior. Mm-hmm. That's one of them. The other thing is that you may see, this is what we kind of picked up with our individuals, the behavior thing first. Then you're going to see 2 cell phones on a person possibly, a change in clothing. Might be a change in their friendships and patterns. They might stop talking to their friends that they used to hang out with. They become more composed to themselves. And so that's why it's kind of hard to read. But like I said, if you're kind of paying attention to some of the things that starts happening, then you'll know that there's a little bit more to what meets the eye here. But like I said, normally most of your actual victims are going to always have 2 cell phones. One's talking to the trafficker, the other one's your business line. Some will actually have up to 3, depending on how savvy the person may be. Then, like I said, in dress is a little different. You might start seeing them wear different types of clothing, more makeup. Certain sexual things will become a little more explicit with them. They'll start acting out certain things. So there's a lot of oddities that start to occur with behavior. Mm-hmm. And if they're in school, they might stop going to school. They just don't go anymore. And they may be a student who may be a good student, and they just may stop going. Yeah. Which is what can happen. Very tired because they're normally not sleeping because they work a lot at night. A lot of weight loss because they may not be being fed either. Because some pimps, the requirement is you either will work if you want to get fed. If you don't work, you're not going to get fed. You might get juice and toast. Possibly. That just depends on what they think. And I think the traffickers, it just depends. Some are a little bit different, some traffickers, because some of them, they look at that person as a commodity. So that might be your pimp that's a little bit milder mannered, but then you may have a gorilla pimp. They're the total opposite. They're very mean. They beat their victims. And some of the girls that we have had, the one that I had was one of my major concerns is she was heroin addicted. And so she didn't like shooting the heroin, but the trafficker would shoot it for her, or her bottom would. So, like I said, you just see a lot of different changes just in what their norm is. And so that's some of the red flags.
So this is actually our most viewed episode. I think it's like 3,000 something views on YouTube. And this completely caught me off guard because you had mentioned like a little bit of background about what we were going to be talking about. I was like, oh, cool. And then it just dives headfirst into all this graphic detail about trafficking. And I mean, people with disabilities are like one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Like susceptible populations to stuff like this. And I never thought about that. Like, it's not something you want to think about. It's not something you think about often. And I think this is one of our most important episodes to keep your eyes out for signs that someone could be, forced into sex trafficking against their will or something. And I mean, I was blown away. I was just basically an observer during this episode. I'm sitting here like, I can't believe like this is really something we're talking about right now. It's wild.
Yeah, I think it was an eye opener for me in two ways. I have a teenage daughter, and I have those simple fears. You know, I teach her just certain things, and for her to protect herself. And as a parent, trying to create a buffer between her and the evil that is out there. But I realized through this episode that was very selfish of me, because why am I only thinking about my daughter? I should be thinking about my sons as well, you know? And not only that, I think in the back of our head, we know stuff like this happens. We know people get taken advantage of. We know that people are constantly looking for a way to say or do something to somebody for their own personal gain. It's just when it gets this sick and this deep with it that we have to open our eyes and ears and be like, you know what? There's red flags here. We gotta reach out. We gotta change the dynamic. And still to this day, like, shout outs to Pat Stevens. Oh my goodness. I love this lady so much. She has been such an inspiration, not only to Friends for Life, but to me as a person, because she's with the county board, but she is also a representative of African Americans who can make it to a higher level in the board. And just being young, I've only seen Caucasian counterparts in those kind of roles. So, you know, contrary to what anybody wants to think about race theory and all of this other stuff, if you don't see anybody representing the culture that you live and that you are in a position that is of standard and status, you will, like, where does the inspiration come from? Mm-hmm. And she has always been one of those people to me. And so shout outs to her. But this is a conversation I can't wait until soon we're actually talking with somebody to have an even deeper conversation about it. But, you know, it was a great one. Dude, I take my hat off to you, because it's a lot of the work that you did, not only in the past, but currently. And that's why I'm so blessed to have you here at Friends for Life to help with our youth and our young, especially our young African-American gentlemen that we have in there, because we have a lot of individuals that we serve like that. And again, this goes kind of back to one of our midweek minis talking about the police brutality and all of this stuff. And these young men they're drawn to a lifestyle that is judging them. Or they get judged because they're out there in this community and no one knows that they're going through different struggles themselves, and they haven't completely gained a grip on those struggles, and it puts them in a very unsafe and scary situation. And we have lost clients through gun violence and assault and stuff like that, because people aren't taking into account the mental anguish or some of the lack that they can comprehend some things. But I really think here, especially at Friends for Life, but there's other agencies and groups that are doing this, we got a good dynamic. We came together and we figured out a way to create a structure that it's actually helping. Mm-hmm. And people are noticing that it's helping, and we're getting these long-term outcomes that are going to be better for each individual, including ourselves. I mean, we benefit when people do right. Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, they don't give out appreciation awards. I'm just an old guy, man. They don't give them out for nothing, Tony.
Well, thank you, man.
You've done the work, man, and that's what it comes down to. A lot of people, this is a job. Mm-hmm. It's something they do to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'll be very honest, all these years I've done it, if money was the only thing, it wasn't quite what I did it for.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, That's just the thing. To me, in this, you have to care about people.
Yeah.
That's part of the whole thing. And like I said, it shows because you're absolutely right. Having these guys someplace on a microphone, then out in the quote unquote real world,
Yeah.
trying to be 20-some-year-olds with all of their friends being in gangs, all of their cousins, nephews, uncles, and everybody else either in the street, on their way to jail, or on their way out of jail. Mm-hmm. And I'm not exaggerating. You know, I know, man.
Not at all.
You know, like I know, the path is already set there for you to wind up in that penitentiary cell with a number. Mm-hmm. Because that's money being made.
It's a system, man, that is broken, but thank God we're here to help fix and facilitate some of it.
and like we're saying, take somebody that is already going through the regular stuff, and then you add a special type of situation. Mm-hmm. They don't have a clue at all, okay? These other young guys are trying to be in a gang and trying to watch the videos and live that life. Mm-hmm. But when you got somebody whose perception is altered...
Yeah. that creates a whole different prospect.
So I really feel good, guys, that these guys will be someplace on a microphone instead of in these streets. Because to me, if it does nothing but that.
All right, Mike Hayes. That was an interesting episode. How about you leave the bongos to Mike?
Yeah, because I'm horrible.
No, that was really an awesome episode, and like the work he does outside of being paid as a worker in the field.
Yeah.
With individuals in the community is really awesome, trying to keep them off the streets and getting wrapped up in violence and crime and stuff like that. I think it's really important, and I think that's like the most grassroots you can get. I mean, he's doing this because he cares about people, and he's using a passion of his music to get them to find something that they can be passionate about that doesn't involve gang banging and getting wrapped up in stuff.
Yeah. And to be 70, doing it. And one of the best things, Mike, I love you, bro. We've worked together for so many years. He's been a mentor to me in so many ways. And for him to have the same amount of charisma to do it, I mean, is astonishing. I even want to give up sometimes. We're like, man, screw all of this. Mm-hmm. You don't want my help, screw you. But Mike doesn't look at it like that. I mean, I tell you, his mind and his heart is something for ages that could be, I swear, it needs to be studied. But the skill set that he brings to people is the option. And a lot of the people in the situations that he comes, they don't get the options like that. Mm-hmm. Everyone's coming at them with, oh, you got to change. You got to do this. You got to do that. Mike is like, look, do what you do. But if you're going to be with me, don't bring that with me. If you're going to smoke some dope, you're going to do all that. Don't bring it in my car, but we can go have a good time. If you have a mindset for music, cool. That's my love too. But what's your passion? And he has always been consumer and individual first. And he was actually one of the first people that we tried to coin that developmental difference thing, which I still believe in. I really loved how he explained it. I really appreciate how he looks at it. And I kind of look at it the same way. But as I was told at one point that, hey, we had somebody tell her, I have a developmental disability. Just call it what it is. So it's a circumstance in which people, there's different fields and different roles with it. But I think when it all boils down to it, it's what's coming from the heart that matters. It's not what you're calling someone per se.
Yeah.
Well,
you've heard me on episodes get into the weeds about the language stuff, and I'm all for everybody being able to do whatever they want and be, represented however they want. But at the end of the day, we need to change shit and not argue about all of this stuff so much and like really move towards like getting stuff done. And I might sound like an ass saying that, but that's how I live my life. I mean, we can call the kettle black all day long, but like I don't really care what the kettle is. Like, can we fix it so that like there's not systemic issues happening where like people are dying and nobody's like making living wages? Can we start there and then we can worry about the stuff when we get the messy stuff cleaned up first?
Yeah.
Please.
You're right, bro. You're right.
What kind of things can people expect once this thing opens up? I mean, you know, there's so many cool things going on there, and I've seen the pictures and the videos, and what's some of the highlights of this park that are really gonna like stand out?
Okay, well, first of all, when we designed this playground, we designed it with one big intention above everything else, and that is for peers to be able to play side by side.
Nice. Beautiful.
And so I got so annoyed at some of the playgrounds I went to, and they had the inclusive swings, the bucket swings, next to the baby swings. Those are not the same age. You know, you don't, a baby and a 5 to 12-year-old, I'm sorry, those are not the same. They do not interact with each other. That's not how this should work.
Right.
And so we really tried to take that mindset when building this. So when we put the swings up, it is going to be age appropriate together, where a kid or kids from school who interact with each other are going to be able to say, hey, this weekend, you know, our parents were going to the playground, and those kids can actually interact and play with each other. So number one coolest thing probably that's going to be on this playground potentially is going to be the zip line. We have what the playground company called their longest zip line they've ever put in on a playground.
You're kidding me.
So
Breaking
it's going to be
records.
sweet. Exactly.
Nice.
We're going to have a traditional rope swing bay, and then we have a bucket swing bay, so they can go side by side, back and forth together. So that's going to be pretty sweet.
All right. So with Ryan Weekman, he's the first celebrity we've had on the podcast, and he was really an awesome guy. He was like super nice. He hung out and talked to us for a long time, and you know, he's you know, when you meet somebody who's got like a little celebrity behind them, I often worry that they're going to be a jerk, and he was not. He was so nice, so accommodating. He talked about farts with us. I mean, he just went the whole 9 yards. He's an awesome dude, and I think what he's doing is really important too, because I love people that solve problems instead of complaining about them. That's like my favorite kind of people. He's like, my son has, you know, a disability, and I tired of taking him to these places, and I have to put him with like the babies and stuff. He's like, he's 10 years old. Like, come on,
right?
like this is unacceptable. So he did something about it. And I love that. And, you know, they're building more parks as we speak. And I think what he's doing is really awesome. And, you know, using his connection in the community to do something good instead of just like self-serving is amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And I think the best part of this episode, like all of that good stuff was cool, but the story he told.
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't seen the episode, please go back, listen, or watch it. He tells an awesome story about him and his friends, and it is phenomenal. It's about storm chasing, y'all. But yeah, I mean, everything that he says, he's actually broken the mold of like the parks around here recently, because even when I was sitting on council, there were things going into place for a new park, a more integrated, more integration for the park, so people with disabilities and stuff can come, and it has to become a norm if it's ever going to be truly accepted and understood. Like, if I had a family member in a wheelchair, I don't want to sit there and have to Google 17 different places to go just to make sure that they have something for the person that I love.
I would agree.
So shout outs to Ryan. I want to kind of turn this into another. Okay, I was sitting and wondering. I was watching a movie a while back, and it was with a dolphin who had to get a prosthetic tail. Does the Toledo Zoo have any animals with disabilities? And if so, you know, are there anything, like what kind of special needs have they had to have, or, you know, special equipment?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So there's a couple that I can think of right off the top of my head. So the eagle exhibit, when you first walk into the zoo, that's the nursery roost. So there's actually a law, and I could be mistaken on it, but I believe this is true. There's actually a law that you can't own a bald eagle unless it has been injured and it can't it needs accommodations in order to, thrive. It has those different strengths and needs. So, our bald eagles, anytime that we have a bald eagle that comes in, is going to have some form of disability, whether that be physical or developmental. I mean, disability is a natural occurrence in every single person's life. I think that's why, you can't really put a label on it. Everybody has the experience. It's a natural human experience to be disabled. It's something at any point anybody can experience. But it's the same for animals. Tinker sea turtle was actually hit by a boat and had to go in and have surgery. So if you actually ever go in, Tink the sea turtle has a weight that is on the back of the shell. That's because when the boat hit, cracked the shell, but every single time that it would try to heal, the air would actually get trapped in, and it still gets trapped in there. So I think the medical term for it is called bubble butt. But so they put the weight on there to counteract it. So Tink has a physical disability, but we found the accommodations. We found what works best, and now Tink the sea turtle can thrive.
We're bridging the gap between humans and other species on this podcast. Wow, that was Tony's getting better at hosting the show, man.
I've been trying.
All right, so that was Kevin Fong with the Toledo Zoo. That was such an awesome conversation because never did it occur to me that we'd have someone from the Toledo Zoo on our podcast. And Kevin really knows his stuff, man. He's young. He just gets it. And he's really accommodating for everyone, people with disabilities, young kids to come work at the zoo. And I love the zoo does a lot of community stuff outside of just the zoo stuff. It's not a place you just go and have fun and with your family. They do outreach. They get kids out in the community. I think that's awesome. And Kevin's the guy who will make it work if you have a kid with a disability that wants to go volunteer at the zoo. He's the man. And we talked for 45 minutes after this podcast was over. He's such a cool dude. And I want to say, I think that's probably the best question you've ever asked on this show. I was like, damn, Tony, I didn't think of that. That's a good question. So,
well, thank you, because I even shocked myself with it. Like you said, Kevin is awesome, and I remember we met him at a gala.
Yeah.
And
Courageous Community Services.
Yep, Courageous, man. Shout outs to them as well, who have also been a guest here. Dude is what I think the younger generation needs to be. The out of the box thinking, the straightforward, and hey, we're going to make a change. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm willing to take it by the bullhorns. And I mean, he's doing it. I've even had my son reach out to him because I want them to connect. My son is 20 years old, and he's about to be 20, but there are so many things that I want him to understand through this field. It's not just binary one thing. There's so many other aspects of it that no one really comprehends or even thinks about. So shout outs to Kevin and the Toledo Zoo, because they're always just, I love my zoo.
We're going to get sued for that.
Probably.
I think a mindset that I've seen too outside of the field, of the DD field, is that something like what you're doing or what Tony and I are doing, or any people that think outside the box in the DD field that aren't just, I don't mean to say just, that aren't working the standard job, a DSP or a SSA or something, the county, those are your typical jobs in this field. Mm-hmm. They always have this conception that there's just no money in that field. Whereas you've taken two things that you've enjoyed. You've taken your passion for video and storytelling, and you've taken your passion for just working with individuals with disabilities, and you've made that into a career.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people who are maybe thinking I'm just going to work here until I find something different? But how can they make this, if they actually enjoy it, how could they make something of their own out of it?
Yeah.
Everyone in this room has.
Right. Yeah. Two, I would say find your passion and chase after that. And what it is typically, that thing that you love to do. This field is so wide open that whatever your passion is, I feel there is a place for it. If you like to fish, I love to fish. there's a place where you literally could just fish in this field a lot. There is something for your passion in this field. 2, like, and I did this for a long time of like being okay in the discomfort of like the fake, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Like the safeness of a job. So like being okay with like letting go of that stability, because it's all unstable no matter what you look at it, to take that chance. Like I had a couple of weeks after, like I worked for the government and I quit that government job and I started my company in 2021. And I've got a wife and I got 3 little kids, and like for a week, I'd lay my kids down to bed and I'd be like, what did I just do to your future? Like, you guys, like, what did I do to you? But it is so worth it. Like when you find that thing that you love to do and you took that chance, it changed. Like my whole life is completely changed in a matter of like 6 months, really at this point. Like it has completely changed. And if I wouldn't have taken that risk, you'll never know what your life could be unless you take that risk. And so, that would be my advice, is just like follow the passion that you have. Find a place that you can actually do that passion within this field, and then just take the risk. Like, just what's the worst that can happen? Like I've had, and little things that have happened since I took that risk is like, one of my provider agencies, that's one of my customers, she said, as long as I'm the CEO here, you'll always have a job. Like if this thing tanks 2 years from now and you can't do anymore, you'll always have a job here. And like those things just reassure you that like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's totally worth it. Like, go for it. Just go for it. Take that jump,
What Wayne Gretzky say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. That and Michael Scott from The Office, I think, also said that.
That's a good meme.
Michael Scott.
The meme awareness.
Right.
So, that is funny that you say that too, because something that I learned in school, and I went to school for cultural anthropology just because I thought it was so interesting. Like I just loved it. I never wanted to work in there. I just wanted to learn. And I went to school, and one of the things that I was writing this like undergrad thesis paper about working like labor in the U.S. It was very boring. But
I'm about to say, I'm about to snooze already.
But the one thing I learned from that is one of my professors said, your job doesn't have to be who you are. Yes. And I was like, that redefined everything, because then I was like, well, I can work for the money and then do what I like on the side. And it just happened to be the video and audio stuff happened to be what I really liked. And I was working in finance until 2 years ago. And before I got this job, I would never, ever, ever have seen myself running a podcast, doing video work full time, ever. I was filming stuff for YouTube, having fun. Happened to talk to Tony one day. I was like, hey, here's this video I made with my friend. He's fly fishing, and it's like a commercial for his shop. Like the first video gig I ever had. And he was like, I've been looking for somebody to do that. And we started doing the podcast in this very room 2+ years ago, right before the pandemic. And it was just like, I started part-time. I was just like, we would do it occasionally once in a while. We didn't put out an episode for like almost 6 months after we recorded it. And then here I am now. This is my full time. It's just like in the DD field. Never would have, my wildest dreams would have assumed that this is where I'd end up.
It's amazing.
It's so wild.
Cool. So what we're telling you folks is you can accomplish your goals in this field.
I'll tell it was the first 2 weeks or something that I started my business. I was out in Butler County and I was shooting a video of a guy who works. He has a job. And so the goal of that video was to talk about employing people with developmental disabilities. I'm not the target market for that video. And I'm interviewing him and I'm talking to him, and he is talking on this video about like, don't be shy. Like, don't wait in the shadows. Like, take that huge step. You'll never know if you fail or succeed. I'm like tearing up interviewing this guy. I'm like, you're talking directly to me. Like, and it's just the power of storytelling. Like, you have no clue when you give someone that tool to like tell a story, or you are able to tell your story, who that's going to impact in what way. Like, his video about employment was exactly what I needed to hear in the moment of life that I was in. So yeah, it's cool.
I love this episode with John Silfies because it was unplanned.
Yes.
He came out here. So he lives in Columbus area, I believe.
It was Columbus or Cincinnati?
I can't remember.
It's one of those.
There's too many C cities in Toledo,
Right?
not Toledo, in Ohio. Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, whatever.
Just those in itself.
But he came out. It was a weird miscommunication. Tony, the Lucas County Board of DD wanted to film something. I came in because I thought I was supposed to film it instead of them, but John came and he filmed it, which is like sweet because that's less work for me. Thanks, John. And so he said it, and I'm, you guys are doing your whole spiel, and they put out this great video of talking about Friends for Life on their YouTube channel, which you guys can go check out. It was awesome, well done. But then he's packing up, and we're like, well, you're here, and we've heard a lot about you, and we wanted to get you in. And if you don't have anywhere to be, you got like 40 minutes to do an episode. And we sat down and we just winged this whole episode, and it was awesome. We learned a ton about him, his business. We've ran into some of his workers out in the field recently, and we went to the Tech Fest in Tiffin, which you guys, those episodes will be coming out relatively soon. They're up in the queue next, which keep your eyes out for those. But John's a cool dude. I'm still waiting on him to take us up on our offer to take him fishing. He said he loved fishing, man, and I love fishing too. So, John, come on, let's go fishing, dude.
Bring the reel. What I love about John is exactly what he said in the clip and exactly what we do. He saw a opening and he created a damn streamline for it. You can't judge or be mad at a person for doing. And then if you go back and you listen to the entire episode, just the struggle that it takes for him to do what he has to do because he's creating a business. He created this, he's hopping out, leap of faith type thing. Is it going to work? He's got a young family and stuff. Like, this is in it for him. But I know he's going to make it. I know he's going to be successful because his heart is in the right place. And I've never really seen people who really care about people suffer that long. You're going to have your suffering times, but you don't suffer that long because the connections that you create help build you back up. So, but shout outs to John and his crew and everything that they do.
I know, I do feel sometimes, because you guys do, you do a lot. You do a lot. And I think it is like so easy to forget or like being like, I just always feel sorry, because I know there's times that I'm like, I need to call and talk to them about this. And hopefully I get passionate about things. Yeah. Hopefully I'm never yelling at things, but I know there's times where it's like, I feel like they got yelled at. I'll be in a meeting. I'm like, I feel like people were really hard on them. And they do a lot. So that's such a tricky, it's just such a tricky part, I feel like, of your guys' jobs is yes, we work for you and, you pay money, but also be nicer sometimes.
I don't think, where we're at right now, this is what I tell myself every day, our providers are, I think, in a lot of ways, on the edge of just complete breakdown.
You know what you're talking
And so, that's the perspective that I always take is when we hear from our members, you guys are coming to us trying to save the organization that you run. For some of our members, it's the organization they've been with for their entire career, 30 years, 35 years. And they're very passionate about the services that they deliver and want to make sure that their organization will be able to provide those services that they care so much about well into the future. And I cannot blame any of our providers for feeling that way. And I know too that, I know sometimes, being a CEO gets a bad rap or being, a leader of an organization. I just think it can be, I think, a lonely job for you guys, our CEOs, and we at Opera, I think, are viewed somewhat as an extension of the state because we do have
close connections up at that state. So, you know, we view it too as just getting feedback, and we can help consolidate all of the feedback that we get, regardless of the volume that it is told to us at, and present it in a way that I think makes sense. So we do appreciate the feedback that all of our members provide us. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do the work without it,
right?
Because then we would just be like doing whatever we wanted, and that's not what our members pay us to do. So we do try and keep that perspective. And I know it's probably really not much different than what our members, our leaders of our organizations are facing, you know, just when you had your own conversation with your direct care staff. I mean, you are telling us these things as also an extension of your own staff of like, this is the issues that they're facing. And I, as the organizational leader, need to come up with a solution. This is me trying to help come up with a solution. So it's all about remembering that and reminding myself of that.
So first, I feel like that was the most perfect Leslie Knope response. Like, I just hear people caring at me loudly.
Very loudly. It's just because they care. It is just because you guys care.
It is. It's true. No, I think like, especially like, because I don't feel like if you don't care, you could even be in this field. Like, I'm sure there are, like we always talk about that. Like, yes, there are those outliers, but for the most part, like, and I feel like the majority of people I know, again, like you said, I started in this agency, I worked my way up, or, you know, like RVI, I started out as a DSP. I went and did other jobs in between, but then I was able to come back. And so for me, that was just really phenomenal. So like, I always have like this super deep love of just like what they've been doing. So I'll do a quick RVI plug, and then I have a quick opera plug. But with RVI, like, you know, we privatized in 1999, which is super early. So there's there was a law that came out in like by 2023, county boards can be provider agencies as well. So the county board used to be all the providers. And so there's been this huge push with new providers coming in that are not affiliated with the county boards, and then ones that were affiliated kind of separating. And it's a very painful process and it's very difficult, especially like, I mean, especially I would say it's more difficult for the providers because all of a sudden you had like county benefits and, you know, PERS retirement. And let me tell you, we don't have that. No. So, you know, so it's like this big transition. It's very painful. But like they started in like they did it in 1999. And so like when I went and worked for a county board, they're like, we're going through privatization and it's really, and I'm like, well, didn't everyone do that like 20 years ago? Yeah. Like I was so confused with it. So like, I'm always really impressed. And so like, I have this like deep love. Like we were always, the reason we have a residential department is because there was a person who was very hard to engage successfully. That's my good. I'm trying not to deal with things. Like I heard that, like, you don't deal with things, you engage with things. Okay. So I'm going to try using that. It sounds nicer. But no provider would serve this person. And so then they stepped up and they did it. And, you know, like being trauma informed and focused on relationships, like they were always really good at that before I started. So I knew it was somewhere that I could go and support and stuff like that. So like I have a very deep love just for that agency and everything that we do. So I think like when you think about that and when you bring it up, it's like, no, like we've been at this, like we were the first to do this. And, you know, a lot of people have that pride in the company that they are representing, running and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely get that. I feel like I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but,
and I would just add too, like, I know that it is, you know, similar to you, kind of like fell into the system. I didn't have any family connection, but I know that a ton of our providers do. That's why they went into this work, is because they wanted to provide a better life for their brother or sister, son, daughter, whatever. So it's deeply, deeply personal. And I never forget that, that this is, it's not just because someone's business that they've grown or, you know, started from the ground up, but that it can be very deeply personal. And I try never to forget that and just remember that while people are sharing their thoughts very loudly, that's where that's coming. It's coming from a very intimate part that, you know, I can't certainly ever think of being able to connect with because I'm not in that position. So I do try, and that's another aspect that I never try and forget.
Yeah. You don't often think that, but like I can think of like 3 different people off the top of my head that I'm like, oh yeah, a sibling, a family member. Tony had an uncle, like that's how Friends for Life got started. You know, so I think that there is a lot of really deep rooted connection in the, it's not just for us, right? It's not just for a paycheck, right? And my 5 cars that I have at home. It really is about the people we support and getting good quality services for them. And, that's the hardest part right now with not having the staffing that we need is like, we know who's suffering, right? Like, yes, business wise, it's not great for business either. No. But that's really secondary to the fact that it's the people we support who are not getting as quality of service as they could. Yeah. Or maybe like help, we always say like health and safety, we've got that, but like there's deeper things. There's community building, there's integration, there's inclusion that all, feels like it's taking a back seat, which I just feel like, drives us backwards and all that. So
that was an excerpt from one of the episodes that Sarah has been doing for us while we're out on the road, just to kind of help fill some gaps. And, this conversation struck me because I was here recording it, when they were having this conversation as, Christine's very well-spoken. She's going to law school and doing all this great stuff to help people with disabilities. And Sarah has done an awesome job hosting while we've been on the road doing stuff too.
Shout-outs to Sarah.
We're hoping she'll get her own show soon. Yeah. Sarah.
Come on now.
But she's really aware of the issues, and she's really, rooted in this field because she has a daughter with a disability, and she understands things from both sides, which is a perspective that neither of us have.
Right.
And I think it's an awesome part of our show. And, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous at first when you suggested the idea. I was like, people are going to be like, why are you having all these random people host your show? But Sarah's done an awesome job, and she knows a lot of people that, she runs in a different circle, I guess, than you maybe. So she has a different variety of guests. They talk about things that I would never think to talk about. And it definitely has a female approach and perspective that obviously neither of us have.
Neither one of us,
well, maybe you sometimes, but no, I'm just kidding. So, it's, I think it was a great conversation, and Christine did a really awesome job explaining that.
Again, Sarah's one of my besties, and I think the best part about it, nothing against Christine, but I like that she called her out. Like, no, you're not gonna just go around it. But she's an attorney. That's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what lawyers do. But yeah, like you said, while we're out and she's able to get a new perspective, new guests, a new mindset, and that's all we're trying to do is to continue the conversation. So shout outs to both of those ladies. Wonderful episode. Please go check it out. Check the entire thing out. One of the ways that we first met was through your CPR and first aid classes. And God knows that I have been through tons of them. And typically every 2 years you have to, research and stuff. But one thing that I could say that was best about your class, and you say it in your class, was that you want you want the people to take away something new.
Yes.
Every time. And you're so skilled as a teacher. I know I always did.
Thank you.
And but throughout your time getting into this, into the training and stuff, was there a growing part? Did you see like people weren't retaining information? Did you notice that people weren't coming to the class to learn, that they were just like, oh, hey, I'm just supposed to be here, compressions, whatever?
Yes. Everybody learns in a different way, okay? And nobody really wants to take that class. But when you explain to people why they should, because like I tell them, what if it's you? What if this happens to you? Would you like somebody just tapping on the mannequin, moving it around, doing those type of things? I said, what if it's you? And I tell the people in my class also that you're here for your certification, but you're actually here for your family. That's how I need you to be thinking about, because that's who they're going to look to solve their problem when the issue shows up. They're going to be looking at you. They think you're a doctor or a nurse already anyways. And so with that, when you explain to people the importance of it, and like I tell them also, is that through 33 years on the fire department, right? Each day we went to work, we had to retrain. And this is for that certification, meaning the CPR first aid Narcan training, that's only every 2 years. And I asked them, when have you ever even done it?
Yeah.
And everybody always talk about, well, I've done this before. I said, what if it's you? Would you like somebody to be playing around like this? No, we have a great time in my class. Have a great time. I truly enjoy it because I like to see when people leave out. I mean, first of all, when they come in, they don't want to be there. But when they leave out, it's like, dang, I really didn't want to be here, man. But I'm cool. You know, I think I can really do something. And a lot of times when you cut out the fat, meaning that I've done it a number of times. And when you explain why you're doing something, okay, this is what you're looking for. This is how this is going to feel. And you make it real. And it's like, okay, they sitting up now because they can see themselves in that situation. So it don't bother me. It don't bother. I like it when people show up and they don't want to be there. I mean, because I teach doctors, nurses, I mean, whoever. I mean, small kids. I even had interpreters I had to have come in before also. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I mean, each one of us have our own talents. And when you finally realize what your talent is and you really go for it, because sometimes people have, like, if they're a singer, right? And they kind of hide it, you can see they shy about it. But when you see somebody that is really good at it and they know it and they go for it. And I
work.
Woo! There you go. and I know I'm good at what I do, and that's not I mean, it has to be a pat on the back because I think that I changed lives.
So Stephen Lewis was an awesome guest. He's not particularly in the disabilities field, but he does a lot of your CPR, well, all of your CPR trainings. And, you know, his perspective, I think, is really important because there's a lot of medical field overlap with the disabilities field. And, you know, he brought a perspective of, hey, I know you don't want to be in this training. Nobody wants to take first aid and CPR. It's boring. You've probably taken it 20 times in your adult life because you have to get recertified every so often. But he said in this clip specifically, he's like, imagine if this was your family member. This could happen to anyone at any time. And just humor me for the hour or two we're here. This is your family member. You're going to be certified. Like, you need to know how to do this if you need to save their life. That's a great perspective, man. I never thought about that because I'm always sitting in these things like, please, for the love of God, get me out of here. I've taken this class 10 times. So, yeah, he's an awesome dude.
Yeah, and whenever I think of Stephen teaching, I think in my mind, like, you're going back to driver's ed or something. Like, yeah, we all know how to drive. We know the basic rules and thoughts of it. But do we really understand how to drive? Do we really know the rules? You know, do we know what those lines on the yellow line and dashes on the other side really mean? And that's what he's always has done. Like any and every time, I think I even say in this episode that I've taken his class, I've learned something new. Because he's taught something new. He is the type of person who will grasp the crowd and he will relate to you. He'll come down to your level. You know,
it's important.
Yes, it's very important anytime in teaching, especially something so important. So shout outs to Stephen. Oh, and his nonprofit. Please look up, donate, help. He does wonderful work for children, for football, and they give away cleats, and it's in the honor of his son, who tragically passed some time ago. Like I said, another beautiful, wonderful episode that we had with someone that I deeply respect, and I his story needs to continue to live.
Yeah, and that's the Delroy Chance Angel Wings Foundation. If you do want to look that up, and yeah, he does help a lot of kids. He's in the newspaper and on the news here all the time doing stuff with kids. So that's great. One thing I notice with a lot of the terms that are used in the disability community, I don't know if this is the right way of looking at it, but I feel like they get hijacked a lot, and then like a lot of other people take them and use them, and then you guys get left out of the conversation. Like people with disabilities get left, like you said, out of the conversation. Sometimes they just take the whole access part out of things. And you know, that's one thing, like why we started this podcast is like to raise awareness, because I don't see a lot of people talking about this on the internet. That was one of the things that Tony was like, hey, we really need to put our voice out there, because there's some people talking about it, but the internet's a powerful tool, and a lot of people yell really loud on the internet, and like sometimes I feel like the important stuff gets lost. So does it ever feel that way, like, hey, you're just kind of jacking our style here, like what are you doing, and then leaving us out of the conversation?
I don't know if, I guess yes and no, right? Like, I don't think it's intentional, and I have found that when you say to a group, hey, what about disability? They're like, yeah, like let's include it, right? And so because it's not intentional, I think, and to Katie's point earlier, I think historically as advocates on the disability side, like I think the Ability Center has made a huge shift in this way over the last, 5 to 10 years. We always took this like reactive approach, right? Like you pissed us off, and then we're coming after you. Yeah. And I feel like we finally realized that it's so much better to play in the sandbox if you're going to share your toys. And so I think, taking this proactive approach of not, coming at someone saying like, you're doing this wrong or you're forgetting about us, but like, hey, can we partner? Can we collaborate? Can we work together? I've found people have been really receptive to, because to your point, when you look at diversity, equity, access, and inclusion, even equity, when you think of equity, a lot of people think of racial equity, which is so important, but people aren't always thinking of women. They aren't always thinking of people with disabilities. So I think, but what I've found is when you're working with different organizations who have these, this passion and these missions, the minute that you mention, hey, what about disability? They're like, oh yeah, like join us, come be a part of the conversation. Like, let's move this forward together.
Exactly. And I have heard from multiple people that, oftentimes until disability affects your life, and it can affect your life at any time, whether you or yourself become a person with a disability or someone with a disability, oftentimes it's just off your radar. My parents would tell you that until, I was born, they really didn't know any other people that had disabilities. But once they had that connection, they became really fierce advocates for making sure that I was included. So I think, also when you're able to make that connection with people and kind of let them know that, no, this might not be something that you might be thinking of now, but that might not always be the case. Disability, 1 in 4 people in the United States has some sort of disability. So
Or will,
right.
And that was my soapbox for the TARDA campaign. I can't tell you how many people that were close to me would say, well, it doesn't really impact me. I don't take TARPs. I don't use public transportation. And I'm like, but you could. Like, there could come a day in your life that is the only transportation you have to rely on. And the other thing is, too, when you start talking about, like, intersectionality, right? Someone with a disability who also is someone who's gay, who is also someone who's black, they don't separate those 3 pieces of themselves, right? Like, they're not going to go to this organization just to receive services for one piece of themselves. It all blends together. And so I think the more we as organizations can work together to see that and to really look at a multi-system approach, the better we're going to be as a community at giving true whole services.
And that's something Tony talks about. Collaboration. That's
almost
all.
had a tear come down.
Because what would it serve us not to have other agencies who do the exact same thing, like what Friends for Life does, not come on our podcast? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We all have the same end goal, We're just separate entities essentially. So Dawn and Katie, we met at the same foundation, or at the same
gala
that we met Kevin at. And
we had the super awesome table.
We deemed ourselves the fun table, and it was true. I think everybody else there looked very like ritzy and like very stoic at their seats, just like a formal event.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tony and I come ripping in. I wore my cowboy hat on a dare from your wife. She was like, "You won't do it." I was like, "I'll absolutely do it."
And you had the tie.
I had the bolo tie on, and I was like, if you're gonna be weird, you might as well just go all the way in.
You gotta go.
And I do stuff like that because I just like to crack the ice, because I know these things can be like really awkward and they can be boring. This was not boring. This was a fun event. I think
fun.
Courageous Community Services did a great job. So I'm not saying your event was boring, but I've been to a lot of these fundraiser events, and some of them can be very, very boring. But Dawn and Katie were awesome, and we were just like, having some drinks. We're like, you guys need to come on the show. You guys are a riot. They came in here. We had some really good conversations, and I'm always on my rampage about language and let's get stuff done. And I guess my message is truly consistent over time.
It is.
Whether people agree with me or not, I don't know. But
And that's funny, because this is the episode that they checked me about the developmental differences mindset or word usage that I'm still kind of for, but I understand it differently.
But again, that's what we're talking about. We break back to the beginning of this episode. You got to do stuff that makes you uncomfortable, and you're not always going to say the right thing, and sometimes you need to get checked.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you need to agree. That's the thing with like media nowadays too, that I'll go on a tirade about media. Like, people aren't willing to have an open conversation without people getting offended. Like,
oh man,
I'm wrong all the damn time. I'm just a dude out here just doing stuff, okay? Like, if you get upset with us, anything we say, come on here, let's talk about it, man. Because like, we're learning just along with the rest of you. And I think that was a great conversation. And they're both doing awesome work. They're both doing amazing things out
at the art museum. Yes.
Yep.
Another wonderful place in Toledo that gets a ton, like our zoos. Our zoo is awesome, and our art museum is awesome. Nationwide type of awesomeness. So to have people come on, take their time, and just turn out to be just great people is always fun.
Well, and the awesome thing about Katie is she's in a wheelchair, but she's worked her way into worked up through work, like her work and advocating for herself and other people with disabilities into a position at the art museum, which is a very like highly renowned institution. It's not just some place you just like send in a job application and they're all right, let's go. And so she's the manager of access initiatives there, and she's literally changing the way the art museum is.
Yeah.
For people so that they can access everything.
Everything. Yeah.
And I like that conversation too, because they both called people out in the sense of the movements going on today are using all the language of people with disabilities and then still not including them. I mean, it's like, it's the most, to me, it's the most asinine. I was going to say the same thing. It's like they're using all the language of people with disabilities who are people that like advocate for themselves. They work very hard to make sure that they're included in these conversations. And then all these other groups are stealing their terminology and all this stuff and then leaving them out of the conversation. Like, you're literally doing the exact thing that you're complaining about to the people who need help the most sometimes. Not the most, but like people who need help in society, because buildings aren't built for people with disabilities. They're all old as hell and they need, like, I don't know. I could rant about that forever. It drives me insane, the irony of it all. Like, you guys are just so full of crap sometimes that it just drives me nuts. We're getting candid as heck on this tail end of this episode. But.
Yeah, we are. I love it, man. Before we leave this, I do remember at the gala, I had to show some old school ways that I used to do at the dinner dance. I had some Michael Jackson popping. I went up there.
I have it on video on my phone.
Oh, dude.
I haven't released it, but I have it.
I think this is the perfect time to do it. It was an awesome occasion, and I can't wait to the next one because I'm going to get a group of people to do Thriller or something with me. That's what we're going to have to do. But Yeah, shout outs.
All right, and we're heading into our last clip of the day here. Sort of a bittersweet clip because we'll talk about it after it plays. But, someone that we both knew very dearly. And let's just get into it.
We never know what we're going to get into.
Awesome. We're always. So why don't you tell us about your business before we get started? What you do, what you're about.
Awesome. So probably, I don't know. I spent most of my career, I've been in the field for about 20 years. Spent about 13 years out at Sunshine out in Maumee and primarily in the residential space. And honestly, it just wasn't cutting it as a newly married man with young kids. The hours of residential don't necessarily jive with what you're trying to do with your own life and your personal life. I was last stop at Sunshine. I was their director of their vocational program for the last year and a half. And when I was doing that, I learned a lot about that particular space. I learned a lot about some of the upcoming changes that were coming, the rules that were currently in place, the rules that they were going to be in the future, and how that would, basically apply. So long or the short, I looked at the program that I was currently managing, basically noticed there were ways that I thought maybe that could move forward in a better direction. And ultimately, I guess got to the point where I decided it might be easier for me to try to do this solo. One of the awesome things about working for a big company is you got a lot of support, a bigger bank account, a lot more resources, but also it just takes a lot longer to get things done. You can't make a decision on your own. Yeah. Right. So, I had a vision. I mapped it out in my head. I bounced it off people I trusted, made the decision to just leave the place I'd been at for 13 years and basically open up my own vocational program. When we opened it, our goal was, as still is today, to have locations that are basically centered around the individual. So instead of, a lot of times I felt like at least 7 to 10 years ago, you'd have a program that people would come and tour, and it was almost like the individual had to adapt to the program. That was backwards then, and it's even more backwards now, especially that the federal and state government is saying it's backwards.
Right.
So the goal now, and what we tried to be the leaders of and jump out in front of 7 years ago, was you first basically stands for like you're first. You come to us. We're not going to tell you what we're all about and what we're trying to do. You're going to tell us what you want, what your dreams, what your desires are. Basically, the vision of the person-centered planning. And we're going to basically try to have our program adapt to you versus you coming into our program. So we take it pretty serious when we have somebody new come and tour. We tell them all the things that we currently do, but we let them know we want to hear what you want to do, because we're either going to be able to meet that need or we're not. And I'm not one to bullshit or say that we can do something when I know we can't. So a lot of times it's parents and individuals, they appreciate that honest, yeah, no, we're not going to work for you. We don't have the resources, but hey, this program over here would be great for your individual. So it's been pretty exciting. I think, we've definitely learned a little along the way, but overall, I think 7 years later, we're still basically doing the exact same thing that we've been doing since day one, which is meeting people, finding out what they want, and then trying to either adapt what we currently have to meet what they need, or if we don't have that, but we can do it, find out a way how to do it where we can afford to do so.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the late, great John Grant. This was our third episode, I think.
It was.
And we were upstairs in the small office before we moved down here. So our first episode was down here in this office. We moved upstairs because we thought it would be a better space, and it wasn't. So we moved back downstairs. So John's episode is one of the few in that room. And, as you can hear, he's definitely an outside the box thinker. He was kind of very driven to make his own way, as you and you two got along very well. Yes. And we're very, heartbroken that John is no longer with us, and kind of hit me like I was just started working for you, and we just started doing all this, and we're gearing up, and we're all excited, and then all of a sudden you know, we had went to his record shop, which you could walk to right from where we're at right now. You could walk out our door and be there in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We went and we did like record trivia, and we'd have a video of that on our YouTube channel. And like we had a lot of fun. And he was just a great guy. He loved music. And then all of a sudden, he's just gone.
Yeah.
We just woke up. You had called me. You're like, John's gone. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, he's gone. It's gone.
Dude, I still remember I was actually out. Me and my family were getting photos. My kids were getting photos when I got the call. And I think it hurts even more to me when it comes to, damn, dude, you had to put this one up. It hurt even more because him, myself, and Chris just had a lunch, man. And we were working on things to progress in the field, to help our individuals, to help our staff, to create this structure of more happiness and virtue versus just, bitter work. Like, and I just remember him giving me all of like, hey, Tony, man, I'm about to retire. I'm such and such is taking over as CEO. I'm just going to be a DSP. That's the best part of my life. I love that. I can come in. I'm late all the time, so I hope I don't get rolled up too much. Like that was what he was saying. And I was just so happy for him. And, I still, like, we took that photo and we kind of captioned, like, what's being big talked about right now. And I think it was not even, just about a week afterwards. So, I'm an emotional person. People, if y'all don't know that about me by now, then just look back on old episodes. But when I connect with people, I connect with them. And the only way that you are not going to be a stationary part of my life kind of is if you decide that. I'm not going to be that person that I don't push you. If you say you want to do something as a friend, I'm going to be there to push you to do it. So basically, don't lie to me or yourself, because if you don't really want to do it, you're not going to do it. And you're going to push away from me because I'm going to be like, hey, you remember you said you was going to do such and such? You still ain't did it. Like, what's holding you up?
Yeah.
And I honestly, a lot of my friendships end that way. And it's not because I think that they dislike me, but they dislike that I'm going to hold you accountable. Like, I want people to hold me accountable. If I would have said, hey, I'm going to start this podcast, and every time you turn around and you're like, hey, so when we're going to record? Oh, we'll get there someday. And like, I would want you to be like, dude, you're bullshitting. Like, stop it. Yeah. Like, let's be real. But John was not a BSer. He was, if he liked it, he liked it. If he didn't, he didn't. If he didn't understand it, he'll say he didn't understand it. It may take a little more education for him. But he will always live on in my heart and in my mind and through this company. Someday I'm going to get this man a statue. I swear I am, because he broke the mold in a lot of different ways, especially at You First. And so shout outs to You First and Kelly over there, John's family, who I think are continuing to run it for him, and continue pushing it. Wonderful organization. And damn, man, you got to the heartstrings right there.
Well, and John was one of the first people that I met. And, one of the things I love about the podcast is you get a closed room hour with someone who, you normally wouldn't get the chance to talk to on that level. And he was one of the first people that got me thinking you can turn, and you as well, you can turn something that you love into a business. Because I've always been a person who is very, like, I don't put up with a lot of bullshit. I've quit a job before because my boss told me, as the only person who worked in the office in the middle of summer with very crappy air conditioning that I couldn't wear shorts, I quit. Because I just don't have a high tolerance for like irrational bullshit, essentially. And John and you were some of the first people that were like, hey, if you're passionate about something and you love it, you can turn it into a business. And I'm still navigating those waters. Like since I've started my own photography business. You know, you've allowed me to do this as a job, which is insane. And when John talked about his record store and how he incorporated it into You First, and I don't know the business details. He could have been taking a loss, but he employed clients. He loved music, and he loved the nerdiest kind of music, which is records specifically, and he turned that into a business that worked. In what planet did disabilities and a record store go hand in hand? The man made the shit work. Yes. And that's what I loved about John. And, you know, he's one of the first people that I thought, like, maybe I could become a photographer. Other people have become a photographer. Why can't I become a photographer? Like, and that's just, people like that are so rare.
Yeah.
And when you lose someone like that, you're like, well, damn it. There was one of the people I got along with and understood like how my mind works. Right. And it's so rare to find people on this earth who are driven, who will push through when they don't want to do things, who can just take an idea and run with it. And people will tell them that they're stupid or wrong or it's a waste of time. And then they prove them wrong and they don't give a shit. I love that, man. And that's what it's all about. And, you know, obviously this episode is dedicated to John. He's one of the first people who didn't even hesitate to come on the show when we first started. We didn't have any. We just bought these microphones.
Yeah.
We had this one. I bought these microphones, showed up in the mail the day before he came on the podcast, and it was just like
the walls were still bare orange.
And the funny thing is the orange of those walls screwed up your camera because they auto adjust the contrast stuff. I was like, why does Tony look orange? Because of your skin tone and the wall, just like the camera went nuts. And I was like, this is the worst episode. But in hindsight, you know, it's sad, but you know, we want to preserve John's legacy, man. He was an awesome guy.
Yeah. I think that this is a very good way to end this episode. And again, shout outs to John, You First, and his family. Condolences, heart-wrenching thoughts for him not to be here. But there's definitely, like you said, there's a legacy of him through what he's built. And I mean, I can't wait to keep moving in the future, because depending on your religious beliefs and all those things, he will be proud, you know, either through heavenly skies or just if he was still around. You know, we're going to move in that notion. But man, you got me all screwed up, dude. You just you jacked me up with that one. But
and we'll wrap up here. I just want to thank everybody that's listened to our podcast. I mean, yeah, it's a gamble when you do something like this, and the amount of people who listen, and you know, the thought that people take what we have to say with any grain of salt is insane to me, because we just literally started this, as you saw at the beginning of this episode, just kind of winging it. And we're here now, and we're only going to keep plowing forward.
That's right.
So all the haters out there, see ya. You hopped off the train, baby.
Right. Don't hate, participate. So yeah, we got new shows coming. I'm telling you, the Friends for Life podcast is not the only thing going on. Wait until you see what's coming next.